have once again taken over this channel. We guide you through the darkness, and we will discover that sometimes monsters are men, corrupted and insane, and we ignore our instincts at our very peril. Night Terror, a retelling by StoryMan-Jack. Caleb Marchant ran through the woods, sweat running down his face and balding head. The red and black swastika tattoos on his pate dark in the moonlight. Stopping briefly, he checked the gun of the pig he'd just shot in the head. He no longer cared about morals, right or wrong. He was strong. He was primal. He took what he wanted, and he would continue to take until something stronger took him down. Everything's a construct, he murmured to himself, his delirious and drug-addled state making him feel like a supervillain. Not a hero, he giggled. Indeed, his tastes went to blood and torture and lust, to show power over the weak, the virus in his brain walking him through the night, the meth keeping him on his feet. His gaunt form made him look like a thin monster, something anyone would run from on a dark moonlit night, unshaven and bestial. He wanted fear. He wanted to inspire a deep and sustaining fear he'd come to feed off that thing. His master would be proud. The cop wasn't afraid of enough, though. Not until Caleb began to dig out some of the man's eyes as he bled out. He was in his element now, in the dark, in the cool fall air. He'd stripped his clothes so that he could hide. The red of drying blood looks black in the dark. Painted head to toe in that cop's blood, Caleb stood naked in the woods, and he was drawn to a fire, a light in the distance. Feed, his master called in the night and the darkness. Feast upon the blood and fear of the innocent. The little black stone carved in the shape of a goose, with a painted red stripe around its neck and feathers that appeared to be dipped in blood, hung from a leather cord around Caleb's neck. Oh, my master, he bawled to his demon master. Lucifer, he growled. I will sacrifice them to you and dine on their hearts. The creature, for Caleb could no longer be considered a man, moved closer to the fire, to the hated light, and he saw his prize. The woman, alone, and sitting so far away from her safety. She was his, and she would sustain him and be the next to feed the lust and rage of his lord, his demon master. He reached out and laid his hands upon the bark of a small tree and the tangle of woods, and began to sway with the wind in time with the trees, letting the movement sedate him, help him wait, for fear was what he wanted. Now she was watching him, waiting, looking right into his slitted eyes. Her logic could kill her. Not the beast that was once Caleb. No, she would tell herself that she wasn't seeing what she thought. Those things only happened in movies. Nothing was out there, and then he would strike. Just as she felt herself free and safe, just as the relief of safety would be gained, he would take her, and he would do as the strong should, improve his dominance and give her writhing heart to his lord. He could feel her absolute terror, her fear, and he felt the power of it wash over him. He felt the gift from his lord wash over him as well. He no longer ate anything but human flesh, and no longer craved anything but innocent blood. He longed to feel the sticky, iron-flavored liquid stream down his chin as he took what first delicious bite of the innocent heart, knowing he'd proven his power one more time. His slender, bone-thin fingers wrapped around a small tree, and he twisted his knuckles white in anticipation, the bark scraping against his sallow skin. The whole time he was swaying with the trees, his emaciated and inhuman body flitting as if unreal part of the shadows. He had played this game before. He had taken so many, and the pigs that hunted him had no idea how to find him, or what his pattern was, or where it was all leading. He felt the woman's fear ebb just a bit, and it would soon be time. She would make for the house, for the safety that lay behind a door with a bolt. This was the time when he could raise her fear to the peak. Just before the adrenaline and the sheer horror exploded, her heart. "No," he whispered, allowing the sound to groan in the wind. "It's the best part." His lord would be unhappy. The soul of an innocent would escape him, and another would need be found to satisfy the hunger of his demon lord, the one who was slowly changing him. There was a time when he sought help, when he wished that being that had appeared in his dreams, the black goose with sharpened human teeth and the fangs of a snake jutting from its misshapen bill. The creature that in his dreams was as large as a pterodactyl, a creature that always appeared with blood dripping from the tips of its cold black wingtips. He told the doctors about it, and they'd given him meds, pills that made him sleep. They called him insane, a paranoid schizophrenic. And though he was just another white national piece of trash and didn't deserve their real help, so he'd given in. He'd taken the offer the dark being had offered. With the power and strength, he no longer would be a slave to his addictions, for they would always be fulfilled, always, so long as the demon got his sacrifice. So long as the blood flowed, Caleb would exist on human flesh alone. He felt the drool drip down upon his chest. "Yes," he hissed, his voice no longer a whisper, but a sibilant lisp upon the wind, as if a snake were speaking through the trees. She was running now, the woman, the object of his lust, the object of his master's desire. Yes, she was running, and so was he, moving with the power of hunger, the speed of shadow, and he reached out. Yes, he would have fun with this one. A long time. It would take a very long time. And he thought it even as his bony hands grasped the woman by her smooth, slender shoulder. She sat smoking. The cool, damp air had her wrapped in a blanket like a living burrito. The night was coming on, but she didn't think anything of it. Annalise had done this often enough. Sometimes she just needed to get away from the hassle of everyone else. There was a lot of people in her house, and the private time she could find would be a blessing. The house was rural. There weren't even any neighbors for more than a mile, and she loved the quiet of it, the sheer loveliness of the absent urban sounds. It gave her a calm that not many other things would or could. Annalise loved the setting, the trees swaying in the light breeze, the smell of earth and leaves and nature, even the smell of the remaining coals of the fire pit. Putting out her cigarette, she sighed and decided to light a second. It just wasn't time to go in and be around all the people. She loved her family dearly, but they could get on your last fucking nerve. As the sun fell below the horizon, she noticed something. Startled, she felt panic began to rise inside her chest, like a living thing clawing at her heart. It was small and subtle at first, but it began to grow, paralyzing her body with terror. She looked up and noticed a disfigured face in the growing gloom. It looked melted and twisted and was watching her through the scraggly trees. It looked haunted, and it increased her anxiety even more. Annalise just sat there, wrapped in her blanket, frozen in fear. The visage never moved, it never twitched, but she could feel the evil, the hunger emanating from it. Sweat began to collect on her forehead in the night, and though she wanted to scream, her terror wouldn't allow her. Barely able to breathe, she considered going for her phone and calling someone inside the house to come out, but her fear filled her mind and convinced her that the moment she moved, that thing, whatever it was, would come for her. She stretched her legs out from under her, as if very, very slowly, that she barely moved, trying to get the blanket to unwrap a bit and fall away. Her fear almost had her unable to do even that. Annalise wasn't a stupid woman. She knew intellectually that there could not possibly be anything there. It was a trick of the failing light, an optical illusion that made the limbs of the trees form an image that terrified her. The logic didn't help Annalise one bit. The feeling like something was there, something dark and hungry. Her instincts to flee were piqued, and she could almost see the drool running down its chin. She knew only that she was food for something not quite right, something of the darkness of the night, and that knowledge caused her to stop the movement as slight as it had been with her blanket. She glanced with the corner of her eye towards the door of the house. It was only 20 feet away, and Annalise knew deep in her terror that she would never make it. Once she looked away, it would be over. It would be after her, and she would die as food, nothing more, to something dark and hungry from the night. Just when she was about to get her fear under control, she heard something. It sounded like breathing, like the thing in front of her couldn't control itself much longer. The clawing, gnawing terror grew intense, and she froze. She was even afraid to look toward the door out of the corner of her own eye. The sound grew clearer, harsher, and Annalise knew it was getting ready to come for her. The small hairs on the back of her neck rose and stood out. The paralyzing fear ate her heart now, having ripped it open inside of her, claws gnawing and teeth gnashing. The cool air did nothing more to slow the sweat that beaded and dripped down her forehead. She stared at the face, at its yawning, hungry expression, amplifying what she felt. "It's just a fucking shadow in the tree or something," she told herself. "It can't be anything. There isn't anything real like that." Yet even if the face wasn't real, the terror was more than real. It became her only reality. She lived in it now, succumbing to that paralyzation. Every moment, an eternity of time, lived in constant terror. Her life was just this one reality. She knew she was just a mother, a wife, a normal human being who worked for a living just like any other Joe on the street. There weren't things that fed upon people in the night. That was fantasy. It was like a horror movie gone wrong. The fear, however, didn't understand that. It didn't care about logic and reality. It froze her as if she were a marble statue. The wind blew, and this caused the face to appear to move slightly. But to her mind, it had to be a trick or an illusion of her eyes, for it swayed with the trees. And she told herself over and over again, and it began to work. She finally leapt to her feet and ran. Unfortunately, she could hear it coming behind her, like a large dog huffing hungrily in the night. Its odor overwhelmed her, the smell of 100 rotten and dead things, and of brimstone and the fire of hell. And she couldn't scream, but she ran for all she was worth, until she felt the cold, hard hand grab her shoulder from behind. And so the night, the darkness takes another victim, and the light loses another innocent. A man, an insane man, whose mind was given him the power and body of a beast, a primal thing that fed upon blood and fear contained within. Now we release this channel back to you until the night falls again. Nox Vini, fear the night.